So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Starmer doesn't have to follow the Tories on immigration to win. A humane approach could still lead him to number 10. So this article was written by someone called Maya Goodfellow. I think I might have read one of her articles before. I'm not super familiar with her work, but this is a solid bit of writing for The Guardian from her. So yeah, pretty good stuff. So she says, I could have written the speech before I'd even heard it. A party committed to a points-based system, a country too dependent on migrant workers, a promise to be practical. It was like Groundhog Day for British immigration politics. Starmer's address to the CBI last month told us much of what we already knew. Labour has little interest in positively shifting the dial on immigration. And she's right, you could replace Starmer with a Tory politician or even a Reform or UKIP one, and they would have said the same thing. Making a positive case for immigration would be a cool thing. But given the often toxic conversation we see around immigration discussion, I can see why Labour are doing this. But really, is that what we want the party to be? One that dodges tough conversations and does not support minorities? Small in number but significant in symbolism, the references Starmer made to migration showed the tightrope he is walking on, signalling Labour will control immigration. This is what the points-based system is about, and the determination not to reintroduce freedom of movement. And promising to make sure the rules for immigration reliant to make sure the rules work for immigration reliant businesses. The position is a reformulation of what politics has been for years, that migration undermines opportunities for people in the UK and the country only wants the, quote, best and brightest. And we've seen politicians, on board of mentioning her name, we know who she is by now, say that EU doctors and nurses took away jobs from her constituents, but then she went on to say that the education opportunities weren't there in the first place, so how does that even work? Also, building around immigration, using immigration purely around the needs of the economy and what businesses need doesn't fully make sense. What happens if these businesses create systems that exploit people, something we've seen with seasonal farming? Also, which industries do you push to just train more British people, and which ones do you allow to recruit overseas workers? Where do you draw the line? The Labour Party will never diminish the contribution it makes to our economy, Starmer said, to public services, to your businesses and your community and our communities. But this is not out of the ordinary. Politicians often make the point of celebrating immigration whilst criticising it. But for Starmer and many others before him, the people who move become a commodity to be included and expelled depending on the country's balance sheet. This is quite plainly what happens when you want an immigration system that works for the economy. Look to New Labour's years for evidence of that. And what happens when businesses have no use for the people they recruited, which could happen for a multitude of people? Will Labour just deport them? People are not a commodity. We don't also exist just to help businesses. Where Tories have brazenly stoked asylum hysteria, Labour has often sat quietly on the sidelines or fashioned its own version. Rachel Reeves criticised the government for not deporting enough people. Yvette Cooper promised Labour would deal with channel crossings through more security, and barely expressed any explicit criticism of government policies that force people to make these perilous journeys, including the dearth of safe routes to get to the UK. The only person who really criticised the lack of safe routes was a Tory politician. The guy who did the old, I'm escaping from a war zone, what do I do? And Suella Braverman had nothing and she choked. This is, a point that's important to me. Labour only really attacked the Rwanda policy based on the costs, rather than the fact that it's an extremely racist policy, which makes no sense. We move certain refugees, but not others based on their ethnicity. They won't move refugees from Ukraine to Rwanda, but they will for other minorities. Reeves moaning about not enough people were deported. I think she was talking about people's claims being processed too slowly, leading to less approvals and less deportations. I want to be charitable, but given the record Reeves and Cooper have, they don't have the best records on what they say. They did push the control immigration stuff back in 2015. Cooper said back in 2013 immigration must come down, and that she kind of semi-agreed with the Conservatives on certain aspects of it. Attacking the government is important, but when you suck as well, don't expect praise from me. You might get it from other people in the space. And this is Yvette Cooper with a mug that says controls on immigration, I'm voting Labour, from 2015. And not many people on the left are calling for unfettered immigration into the UK. We're asking for humane systems. But it's just ridiculous. And she stands pretty proudly with that mug, and she was one of the ones who really, I think, led Ed Miliband astray. His team in 2015 was so bad. But then, if he didn't fail, we'd never saw Red Ed Redemption. But if he succeeded, we wouldn't have Brexit. So Starmer said in a Sky News interview that in particular cases there's a case for electronically tagging people who are waiting for their asylum applications to be processed, and Labour has announced that it will introduce fast-track processing for people arriving by small boats from Albania and other safe countries, reinforcing the wrong-headed, pernicious Tory anti-asylum arguments. And tagging people, asylum seekers, is dumb. It's going to lead to costs in checking on people and enforcing the tags. Also, people just try and break out of immigration centres. There's nowhere really for them to go because they won't get any support from the state. This is red meat to the base. Tagging people who are looking for asylum in this country is just inhumane. Like, that's how you treat criminals, like hardened criminals, or people on remand, for example. But it's just ridiculous. Also, fast-tracking applications from people who cross the channel just incentivizes crossing the channel more. Think about it. You think you have a justifiable asylum claim. You can only claim asylum once you're in the UK for the most part, but regardless of how you intend to get here, if you do brave the channel, your case will get heard before other people who have applied through other methods. Even if you're, say, a Ukrainian refugee, right? If you think your asylum claim will be heard quicker because you crossed the channel on a small boat, surely you're more likely to do that. This system, his idea, incentivizes more channel crossings and more lives lost in the English Channel. It's just a ridiculous statement from a clown. The author goes on to say, a cursory glance at British history shows that there's always a group to attack. Irish people, no blacks, no Irish, no Jews. People from India, the Caribbean, Bangladesh. Now, what's your beef with us? Like, we do nothing. Like, genuinely small country, and we have probably the best food of the Indian subcontinent. Don't at me. Poland, Polish people get attacked by the British media a lot. Romania, and now once again Albania. But this seems to bother Labour little. Why are they attacking Bangladesh? Like, well, when did this even happen? I guess everyone from the Indian subcontinent, got the treatment. Is that what she meant? I don't know. I should have mentioned Pakistan as well, which is weird, given that the slur around people from the Indian subcontinent, they just call us Pakis. Generally, even though we might not be from Pakistan, and it's a slur in itself. The party doubtless sees itself as different enough from people from the government by opposing the Conservatives' painfully punitively's their Rwanda policy. Labour politicians cannot simply be favourable compared to against what they're not. They're also meant to be judged for what they will do. And again, this is important. We need to judge Labour not just as them being better than the Tories, but also versus what they could be against other centre-left parties, etc. And for those people like, oh, you can't criticise Labour because you're helping the Tories. And no, it's like, I want Labour to be better. That's the whole point of this thing. Otherwise there's no point. You might as well just vote red no matter who. Even if the Labour Party put David Cameron in charge, you'd still vote red no matter what. It's ridiculous. They surely know all of this. They actively choose the path where they could have opted for another. Their critics point to shifting public attitudes and ask why, even in this environment, Starmer's Labour Party is not willing to change the script. The public feels more positive about immigration, and it's no longer one of the electorate's top concerns. The more observant argue there is a kernel of truth here, but if not now, even now, will there ever be change? I don't know, it's a bit of a weird sentence. And I'm not sure how true this is about immigration being seen more positively. It's probably because people don't talk about it as much, only in the context of small boat crossings, asylum seekers basically. But I'm not sure how true this is, given that Labour are targeting, quote, mortgage man. If you haven't watched that video, watch it and cringe with me. They don't care about the broader opinion polls. They are firmly fixed on a few sets of voters. I just wonder how far they'll go in this goal, but it does show that public opinion can change despite having toxic politicians pushing in the other directions. Looking at you, big Suella Braverman. But reading the polls like they're the tea leaves is never a good strategy. That is why, regardless of what favoured social attitudes say, to truly chisel away at the UK's harmful immigration policies, decades of entrenched thinking has to be confronted head-on. The alternatives have to be proposed. That would mean Labour challenging the anti-immigration myth, creating fewer hostile rules, and seeking to make migrants' lives better, not worse. And Labour are scared of actually getting into fights and offending people. They want to be as less offensive as possible. That means Labour MPs and even shadow ministers ignoring or even attacking minorities in order to sate the racists. I guess pushing back against xenophobia will be down to minorities and a few others who actually care about other people rather than just 50-year-old white dudes with mortgages. But it seems to care hardly about changing any of this, about the people who are affected by such policies. Labour's proposals look like a focus group plan on how to win over voters in marginal seats. They read like a calculation that assumes the supporters of the party could lose to the left will always be outweighed by the chunk of Labour supporters who will keep in spite of its positions, essentially taking votes for granted. And those it will pick up, at least in part because of it. More than politically risky, this is cynical, destructive and unnecessary. Labour can win an election with more principled positions on immigration, and this is a product, in my opinion, of extreme triangulation and focus groups. Labour are focusing on a small amount of voters, but I do wonder what would happen if the Labour base did not turn out, if people who were not in their mid-50s, white males with mortgages, did not come to vote. What would happen then? But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.